Three players named over the weekend to Team Canada. No surprise, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, and Alex Pietrangelo from the Vegas Golden Knights. Your work, by the way, with Doug Armstrong can be seen in the Toronto Star. What tidbits did you get out of it, or what were your biggest takeaways from your conversation with General Manager Doug Armstrong?
Well, I think because it's such a weird, it's just a weird period in our lives still. And because, the NHL only officially agreed to go to the games a month ago or so, like it's probably sneaking up on people how close the real decisions are coming here. And so, yeah, they've named the three players you mentioned as their first three. Each country's doing that. I saw that Sweden's got Victor Hedman, Mika Zibanejad, and Gabriel Landeskog as their first three. I'm sure in the coming days, we'll learn among the other teams. But, by October 15th, which is getting soon, that's when Team Canada has to put in its long list, it's called. And basically at that point, those players are subjected to different sorts of drug testing. There's paperwork and stuff for them to fill out, but no one that isn't on that long list can represent Canada at the Olympics. So if someone came out of nowhere and had a monster season, if they're not that part of that list, October 15th, they're no longer under consideration in any way, shape or form. And, in talking to Doug Armstrong, there's a couple things. Like he mentioned just the youth, like this is like going to be a real sort of turning over a new leaf for Team Canada, I think. And so, yeah, you're going to have Crosby there. I would think, Brad Marchand will be back. Patrice Bergeron, guys who played in the 2016 World Cup. Obviously, Alex Pietrangelo is from that group. But there's going to be a ton of new players. And they're not new to us as hockey fans. We're talking with the McKinnons and the McDavids, probably Mitch Marner, guys like Mark Scheifele, Mark Stone. But, players that have not played for Team Canada in a best-on-best event. And so I think that's actually, for me, one of the things I'm most excited to see is just kind of this, new wave of blood coming in. And talking to Doug, there's a lot of planning going on. Like he said, they're more than a year into their player evaluations as a management group. They had a 4-day sort of retreat with the coaching staff, the management staff, the equipment staff in Banff in September, start of September. And so, yeah, this hasn't been maybe front of mind because just, again, everything's so weird, but this is going to happen quickly. We're going to have a Team Canada. We're going to presumably see them at the Olympics, although there is still the ability for the NHL and NHLPA to pull out right up until January without any penalty. But let's hope that this is going to be a great season and we're going to, actually get these teams picked because, I don't think we've had as much debate as you normally have around who should be there and who shouldn't be there because it's kind of sneaking up on us.
What's funny, actually, a couple hours before we got together for this podcast, I got asked by this ESPN radio station in Albany about whether or not players are actually really going to go to the Olympics. And like, I'm kind of more basic with it. Like, I'm just seeing the news that's out there. It's like, okay, they're allowed to go. And I feel like as if like, at least on two different occasions, we've heard that the players are going to be able to go, but there seems to still be some doubt over whether or not this could happen. You just mentioned that the NHL could, and in January just say, you know what, we're not going to do this. Do you, Chris, actually think this is going to happen? I think it's going to happen, but I'm curious what you think about this.
I definitely think it's going to happen just because the players want to do it so badly. There's a lot of reasons you could argue for them not to do it. For example, they didn't get COVID insurance as part of the Olympic deal. So if a player were to go to Beijing and contract COVID and have to miss time with his NHL team, theoretically that NHL team doesn't have to pay him for the time missed. They're not going to, unless something dramatically changes, and I really don't think it will at this late hour. They're not going to be able to bring friends and family. There's talk of them basically not being able to leave the bubble in the athletes' village, that they might have to wear tracking devices to be used for potential contract tracing and to track their movements. I mean, this, other than the fact you get to go represent your country in the biggest sporting event the world knows, this is going to be a very inconvenient Olympics, call it. It won't be a great experience, especially inevitably some team's going to go over there and not have a good tournament either. So you're going to put yourself through all these sort of sacrifices. You're going to get there. And then, if you don't win a gold medal, if you're Team Canada, or whether it's Finland or Sweden or Russia or the US, there's not room for all those countries on the podium. And all those countries will go expecting, to be in the conversation for a medal at minimum. So, I think that it says something about what this means to the players that they accepted the deal they did. And a lot of it is these guys like McDavid and Matthews. Victor Hedman actually has been quite outspoken. These guys grew up watching the Olympics with NHL players, and they didn't want to have that pass them by, not get that opportunity in their own careers. So I do believe it's going to happen. The biggest sort of existential threat to it not happening is if, this NHL season gets disrupted with COVID outbreaks. If a lot of games have to be rescheduled, like we saw last year, there's just not room on the calendar to do that and also have an Olympic break. So yes, if one team has to have 3 games rescheduled, that's probably okay. But if we see a number of outbreaks among teams and huge swaths of the schedule get disrupted, the league and the Players Association will have no choice. I mean, the first priority this season, of course, is getting games played, getting an 82 game season, and getting fans back in the building, which is, money in the till, essentially getting the business up and running again. And so, that's going to take priority over the Olympics if they have to make a hard choice between the two.
Mm-hmm. And with Team Canada, just going back a little bit more to the story you wrote with Doug Armstrong, one thing I found myself doing, it's actually funny that you said there wasn't that much debate. When I had to guest host on TSN 690 a few months ago, like one day I had to be, we essentially decided, we're going to talk about Team Canada. Right. And I ended up trying to put together a lineup, which, it's funny. I don't normally do that. But I was like, okay, crap, I have to do this for radio. So I know you probably have to do it through your work as well. Is there a name out there that you're thinking might surprise people, but might be even if they're just in consideration in that long list? I wonder if there's a name out there that's going to surprise people, because we know we're going to see Marner, we're going to see McDavid, we're going to see Crosby, Huberdeau is going to be there. I wonder, guys like a Ryan O'Reilly or a Matthew Barzal, or if you're in Montreal, depending on who you ask, people are going to wonder if Nick Suzuki has a fighting chance. I don't think he does, but I'm just curious if there's still going to somehow be a surprise name that could somehow end up in consideration for Team Canada this year.
Well, I think all the names you mentioned will be on the long list, including Suzuki's, I would expect, because that allows, if he has, if he blossoms even more for the first half of this year, that they can at least have that more as a consideration for them. There's a guy like Adam Pelech, say the Islanders defenseman, who certainly doesn't have a lot of profile around the league, but, has played very well. And the Islanders have reached the Eastern Conference Final each of the last 2 years. And so he's played in a lot of big games. And I think he's someone that's on management's radar. I think the blue line in general is going to be an interesting choice. One thing Doug Armstrong told me is that in a perfect world, he's of the belief he'd like to have the lefties and righties match up in terms of, how guys shoot. I don't think Team Canada wants to be moving someone on the blue line out of position, whereas of course there's always a number of centermen that get moved to the wing at a tournament like this, because Canada just has so many elite options down the middle. And I think when you look at the left side of Canada's D, it's not entirely clear how that will shake out. And, you do have players, whether it's a Pelech or a Thomas Chabot or Morgan Riley, these Darnell Nurse, they're certainly not all getting there, but they're all going to at least have a shot, I would think, at being a bottom pairing or the seventh guy, on the roster. And so, the blue line is probably the biggest choice. The goaltending will be interesting too, right? Carey Price in your city there in Montreal doesn't seem like he's going to be ready to start the season, after his off-season procedure. How does he play? I think we all see him as the incumbent. He had a great playoff run for the Canadians, but who do they bring in addition to him in case you get over to Beijing, he doesn't perform well? Carter Hart would have been in that conversation, but he's coming off a difficult year in Philadelphia. I think he can still get there with a bounce back, but the goaltending, I do think, was Marc-Andre Fleury going to get serious consideration? There's going to be some surprises here. I think probably the fewest surprises will be among the forwards. I think most of us would be agreed on about the top 9. And then you probably have an argument. There's a pool of 10 players that could be in the next 4. And, I think Jonathan Taves could get back there despite missing all of last season, depending how he starts. I don't think it's impossible. I could see him in a 4th line / 13th forward role just because of his experience. And obviously I'm hoping Jonathan comes back and has a great season. It was tough circumstances that he missed all of last year, but it's an embarrassment of riches. Let's face it. Our B team from Canada would still put up a pretty good fight in these kind of tournaments. And, that's why I think it's a tough job that management has, and they're already zeroing in on it. They make that long list October 15th. They have a call early November. They have a call early December. There'll be probably a few more sprinkled in that aren't booked, but then they're making the team by January. So we're going to get it. I think as this season, the first 2 months of the season, we're going to have a lot more Olympic talk, because I think it's going to be a real, thing around the league and for different countries where, there'll be a focus on it.